It's April 1st, 2026. A Dutch luxury cruise ship called the MV Hondius departs from Ushuaia, Argentina. 114 passengers, 61 crew, berths priced between $14,000 and $22,000. Antarctica, South Georgia, remote South Atlantic islands. A bucket list voyage for people wealthy enough to afford it. Nobody on board knows that someone is already sick. The Andes virus is normally found in the Andes Mountains of Argentina and Chile. It lives inside a small rodent called the long-tailed rice rat. The rat carries it in its urine, its feces, its saliva. The virus does not make the rat sick. The rat just carries it, sheds it, leaves it behind in the dust of wherever it went. Primary hantavirus infection typically occurs via human inhalation of aerosolized excreta from the long-tailed Calo rodent. You don't need to touch the rat, you don't need to be bitten, you just need to breathe near where the rat has been. A shed, a barn, a hiking trail, a patch of grass. The virus is already in the air. This is how it has always worked. Rodent to human, end of chain. Except for one strain, the one that was already on the MV Hondius. The Andes virus is the only known hantavirus strain capable of person-to-person transmission. Every other hantavirus on Earth, including the sin nombre virus common in North America, can only move from rodents to humans, never between people. The Andes virus is the exception, and on a cruise ship with 175 people sharing cabins, dining rooms, and ventilation systems for weeks at sea, that exception changes everything. Here is what the virus does once it gets inside you. The first week feels like the flu, fever, fatigue, headache, muscle aches, nausea, nothing that would make you think you were carrying something with a 20 to 40% fatality rate. The incubation period is 1 to 7 weeks. You can be infected and feel nothing for over a month. Then suddenly the lungs. Illness is characterized by fever, gastrointestinal symptoms, rapid progression to pneumonia, acute respiratory distress syndrome, and shock. The virus attacks the capillaries, the tiny blood vessels, in the lungs. They start leaking fluid. The lungs fill. Breathing becomes impossible. The heart struggles to pump. In severe cases, the patient requires a mechanical ventilator. Then, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, a machine that oxygenates the blood outside the body while the lungs are too damaged to function. WHO. There is no antiviral treatment, no vaccine. Suspected cases require prompt transfer to an adequately equipped emergency department or intensive care unit, where available, for close monitoring and supportive management. On a ship in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, far from any ICU on Earth, your options are limited. The index case, a Dutch citizen who showed the first symptoms, had gone on a 4-month road trip between November 2025 and April 2026, spanning Chile, Uruguay, and Argentina. He returned to Argentina from Uruguay only 4 days before the ship's departure. Somewhere on that road trip, in a field or a shed or a campsite somewhere in southern South America, he breathed air that a rodent had been near. The virus entered his lungs. He felt nothing. He boarded the MV Hondius. Illness onset occurred between April 6th and April 28th. The first symptoms appeared 6 days into the voyage. By April 24th, his wife was also sick. She disembarked at St. Helena, deteriorated on a flight to Johannesburg, and died upon arrival at the emergency department on April 26th. Her husband would die at sea. Woo, they were the first two. They would not be the last. By the time the WHO received notification on May 2nd, there were 7 cases, 3 already dead, 1 critically ill. The CDC classified the outbreak as a level 3 emergency response. The ship was still at sea, still moving. Passengers from Spain, France, the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, all confined to a vessel that had become a floating exposure event. After receiving approval from Spanish health authorities, the ship departed for Tenerife in the Canary Islands, arriving on May 10th. There, the evacuation began. Passengers were repatriated on specially arranged non-commercial flights. UCHU Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus flew to the Canary Islands personally to coordinate the response. International contact tracing was initiated for passengers who had disembarked at St. Helena, Praia in Cabo Verde, and Tenerife. Contacts on flights where confirmed cases had been present were identified and monitored. WHO. As of May 15th, former passengers were hospitalized or quarantined in Australia, Canada, France, Germany, the Netherlands, St. Helena, Singapore, South Africa, Spain, Switzerland, Turkey, and the United States. A virus that normally lives in a small rodent in the mountains of Patagonia had passengers in quarantine on 4 continents. On May 18th, the CDC confirmed that 18 recently repatriated U.S. passengers from the MV Hondius were requested to remain at the Nebraska quarantine facility through May 31st, the 21-day mark of their monitoring period. CDC issued quarantine orders for 2 passengers who were repatriated to Nebraska from the ship. The total case count, as of the latest update, since the passengers disembarked, 3 additional cases were identified, 1 each in France, Spain, and Canada. On May 18th, the MV Hondius arrived in Rotterdam. Everyone was retested and then disembarked. The 23 crew from 4 countries entered quarantine. The body of a deceased passenger was removed for cremation. The vessel began disinfection in preparation for returning to service. The ship that started this is now being cleaned. The outbreak is not over. The contacts are still being monitored. The 42-day quarantine period the WHO recommends, based on the outer limit of the incubation window, means some people will still be under surveillance through mid-June. The question everyone is asking is, should we be worried? The honest answer is, it depends on what you mean by worried. The Andes virus is the only known hantavirus strain capable of limited human-to-human transmission. Every other hantavirus in the world can only be passed from rodents to humans, never between people. The key word is limited. Sustained human transmission chains remained extremely rare and poorly understood until the 2018-2019 Epuyén outbreak in Argentina, which infected 34 people and killed 11. Transmission of the Andes virus requires very close person-to-person contact, not casual contact, not being in the same building. Close, prolonged, sustained contact. The kind that happens between household members, caregivers, intimate partners, and, apparently, passengers on a luxury cruise ship spending weeks together in a small enclosed environment, thousands of miles from land. The ship created a perfect incubator, not because the virus mutated, not because it became more transmissible, but because the environment removed all the normal distance between people. Shared ventilation, shared dining rooms, weeks of close proximity with no way out. This is not the next COVID, but it is a serious infectious disease. Most people will never be exposed to this. That is the accurate framing. The global risk is low. The WHO has not declared a public health emergency of international concern. The case fatality rate of 27% sounds alarming, and it is, but it applies to a very small number of people in very specific exposure situations. What makes this outbreak significant is not its current size. It is what it reveals about the Andes virus specifically, the one hantavirus that can move between people, in an environment that nobody anticipated would ever host a hantavirus outbreak. Hantavirus has been known since 1993. Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome was first recognized in 1993. For 33 years, it has been a disease of rural exposure. Hikers, farmers, people cleaning out rodent-infested buildings. A disease you got from the land, from the dust of a place where wild rodents had been. The MV Hondius changes the mental model. Not because the virus is new, not because it is suddenly more dangerous than it was last year, but because it demonstrated in real time, across a multi-week voyage tracked by every major health organization on Earth, that a virus that originated in a South American rodent can travel on a ship to a St. Helena hospital, a Johannesburg emergency department, a Nebraska quarantine facility, and a Rotterdam port disinfection crew, all from a single breath of contaminated air on a hiking trail somewhere in Patagonia, months before anyone even felt sick. The rodent never left Argentina. The virus went everywhere.